The camera crew from the Food Network was setting up in my mother's pristine, white marble kitchen. My brother, Leo, smoothed down his designer blazer and practiced his smile in the reflection of a copper pot. A pot I knew for a fact had never been used for cooking. He caught my eye and gestured for me to come over. "Chloe, darling," my mother called, her voice like honey laced with steel. "They want a shot of the famous Astor family recipe book. Go fetch it from the study, would you? The one we keep for special occasions." She winked at the producer. The one I wrote. The one they kept locked away so no one could see the truth. That's when I knew I couldn't do it anymore. I smiled, a tight, brittle thing, and said, "You know what? I think you know exactly where it is." Then I turned around, walked out the front door, and got in my car. As I drove away, my phone blew up with a single text from Leo. "Where are you going?" "The shoot is in 10 minutes. You're ruining everything." I typed back a single sentence. "No, I'm finally starting it. My name is Chloe, and for the last 10 years, I've been the ghost in my own family's success story. To the outside world, my mother, Eleanor, and my brother, Leo, are the geniuses behind the Astor Patisserie, a boutique bakery chain that has become the darling of the city's culinary scene. They've been featured in magazines, on foodie blogs, and now they were about to get their own segment on a national morning show. Eleanor is the face, the elegant, warm matriarch with an innate gift for baking that was passed down through generations. Leo is the brand, the savvy, charming business mind who turned a humble family passion into a lucrative empire. And me? I'm the family's dirty little secret. I'm the one with flour permanently under my fingernails. I am the generation it was passed down to. The recipes they call family heirlooms? They're mine. I developed them, perfected them, bled for them in my tiny apartment kitchen, fueled by coffee and a desperate need to keep the memory of my grandmother alive. My grandmother, Clara, was the real baker. She was magic. Her kitchen was a sanctuary of bubbling jams, warm bread, and the rich, dark scent of chocolate. She didn't measure with cups. She measured with her heart. When she passed away, she left me her worn, butter-stained recipe journal. It was my inheritance, my most prized possession. I was working as a research archivist at the city library. A quiet, methodical job that I loved, a world away from the high-stakes pressure of professional kitchens. Baking was my way of connecting with her, of continuing her legacy. I started a little blog, just for fun, documenting my experiments as I updated her classic recipes with modern techniques. I'd spend weeks perfecting a single salted caramel ganache or a lavender-infused meringue. It was my art, my therapy. Then, one day, my mother had an idea. I had just lost my part-time library contract due to budget cuts, and I was panicking about rent. "Why don't we sell some of your cakes at the farmer's market?" Eleanor had suggested, her eyes gleaming with an ambition I didn't recognize. "Just for a little extra cash. We can call it the Astor Patisserie, a tribute to Grandma." It sounded so innocent, so loving. Leo, fresh out of business school with a mountain of debt and an ego to match, designed a logo. We started small. I'd bake all week, and they would work the stall on Saturday mornings. People went crazy for my cardamom rosewater cake and the Black Forest torte I'd spent 6 months perfecting. It was thrilling. For the first few months, it felt like a team effort. They'd come back with cash in their hands and stories of customers swooning. "We sold out in 2 hours, Chloe," Leo would boom, clapping me on the shoulder. "Our cakes are a hit." And it was always we and our. And in the beginning, I believed it. But the line between we and I started to blur, then fade completely. The farmer's market stall became a pop-up shop. The pop-up shop became a brick-and-mortar store in the trendiest part of town. Leo's slick marketing and my mother's social climbing were a potent combination. Soon they were opening a second location, then a third. And I was still in my tiny apartment, covered in flour, churning out the creative work that fueled the entire operation. I was the R&D department, the head baker, and the quality control manager, all for the price of my monthly rent, and the occasional, "You're such a lifesaver, Chloe." My archivist job, which I eventually got back full-time, became my refuge. But the bakery was a black hole that sucked up all my free time. They never called me a co-founder. In interviews, when asked about the recipes, my mother would smile her serene, practiced smile and say, "Oh, they're old family secrets. I've been tinkering with my mother's notes for years." See, Leo would add, "Mom is the creative genius. I just handle the spreadsheets." My name was never mentioned. I was the anonymous, invisible engine humming away in the background, and the sound of my silence was the price of my family's love. The injustice wasn't a sudden storm. It was a slow, creeping dampness that got into the walls of my life. It was 1,000 tiny cuts. It was Leo calling me at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, the night before a major presentation at the library. "Chloe, we have a huge corporate order for tomorrow morning. The new client wants to try the lemon thyme tart. Can you whip up a dozen? You're the only one who gets the curd right." There was no please, no "I know it's late." It was an expectation. I stayed up until 3 a.m., my eyes burning, my presentation for the next day suffering. The next morning, I saw an Instagram post from the patisseries account. A glossy photo of my tarts. The caption, written by Leo, read, "A little something Mom and I dreamed up for a new client. Hacked Aster Magic Nap family business." I felt a familiar, bitter pang in my chest, but I swallowed it. I told myself it was for the family, that my success was their success. It was my mother, sitting down with a reporter from a lifestyle magazine in our beautiful flagship store, a place designed to look like a rustic French kitchen, a place I had never once baked in. The reporter asked her, "Eleanor, your daughter, Chloe, what is her role in this incredible venture?" And my mother, without missing a beat, laughed lightly. "Oh, Chloe is our biggest cheerleader. She's a wonderful home baker, a real hobbyist. She helps us test recipes sometimes on the weekends. She's much more of an academic, you know. Happy with her books." A hobbyist. I had single-handedly developed over 40 unique items on their menu. My hands were chapped and scarred from burns, my nights sleepless from stress, and she called me a hobbyist. When I confronted her about it later, she patted my arm condescendingly. "Darling, it's just branding. Librarian by day, secret baking prodigy by night, isn't a clean narrative. It confuses the customer. This is simpler. It's better for business, better for her business. Built on my back." The worst was when they started to believe their own lies. Leo would come to my apartment, which he called my test kitchen, and critique my work. "This needs more zest, Chloe. The mouthfeel on this mousse is a little grainy. Let's try it again." He couldn't tell the difference between baking soda and baking powder, but he spoke with the authority of a Michelin-starred chef. He was a parrot, repeating critiques he'd read in magazines, pretending they were his own insights. They were performing the role of creators, and they needed me to be their silent scriptwriter. The dynamic was suffocating. I was the dependable, quiet, ever-giving daughter and sister. The one who didn't need the spotlight. The one who should be grateful that her little hobby was being put to such good use. They paid my rent, and in their minds, that purchased my silence, my talent, and my soul. They didn't see it as a salary for the cornerstone of their multi-million-dollar business. They saw it as a generous stipend for a family member they were helping out. Every time I tried to bring it up, to ask for credit, the conversation was masterfully twisted. "Don't be so sensitive, Chloe. It's a team effort." Or worse, from my mother. "Your grandmother would be so proud of what we've built in her honor." Using my love for my grandmother against me. That was their masterstroke. And for years, like a fool, I let them. The breaking point wasn't one thing, but the final crushing weight of 1,000 things. It arrived in a glossy email from a New York publisher. Leo forwarded it to me without comment. The subject line was, "Cookbook offer. The Astor Patisserie." My heart hammered against my ribs. A cookbook. It was the one thing I had always dreamed of. My personal blog was filled with half-written drafts, with stories about my grandmother, with the very soul of my baking. This was it. The chance for my story, our real story, to be told. I called Leo, my voice trembling with a fragile, hopeful excitement. "A cookbook, Leo. This is incredible. I can finally write down the stories behind the recipes." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then a dry, businesslike tone that instantly chilled me. "Right. About that. Mom and I have already had a preliminary meeting with the publisher. They're thrilled. The advance is significant." He said, "Mom and I, not us." "The narrative is solid," he continued, steamrolling ahead. "It's the story of a mother passing down her family's legacy. It's powerful. It's marketable." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What? What story? What about Grandma? What about me?" Leo sighed, a sound of pure impatience, as if I were a child asking a stupid question. "Chloe, be realistic. You're not a public figure. Mom is the face of this brand. It's her story that sells. But you're a crucial part of this." "Oh, here it comes," I thought. The crumb. "We need you to codify all the recipes, like, officially. Proper measurements, step-by-step instructions, all the head notes. The publisher has a tight deadline. They need the first 25 recipes in 6 weeks. He wasn't asking me to co-author. He wasn't offering me credit. He was giving me a homework assignment. I was being hired, as an uncredited ghostwriter, to write my own life's work in my mother's name. I felt a volcanic rage building inside me, so hot it made me dizzy. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You want me to write the book, you and Mom will put your faces on the cover, and I get what, exactly? A thank you in the acknowledgments?" "Don't be so dramatic," he scoffed. "Of course we'll take care of you. We'll up your stipend for the next few months to cover the extra work. Look, This is a huge opportunity for the family. This is the next level. We're talking a national platform. TV shows. That's when my mother got on the extension. "Chloe, darling," she said, that saccharine voice grating on my last nerve. "Leo is right. This is for all of us. Think of the legacy. When you're ready, come over and we can outline the chapters. I have some wonderful stories about your grandmother that would be perfect." Stories she'd heard from me. Stories I had told her in confidence. Moments of grief and love that she was now planning to monetize. That was the moment. The final, clarifying, soul-crushing snap. They weren't just stealing my recipes anymore. They were stealing my life. My memories. My grandmother. After I hung up the phone, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A strange cold calm settled over me. It was the archivist in me taking over. For years I had operated on emotion, on love, on guilt, on a desperate need for their approval. Now, all of that was gone, burned away by the fury of their betrayal. All that was left was fact, and the facts needed to be documented. I went to the old wooden chest at the foot of my bed. Inside, beneath a pile of my grandmother's quilts, were my journals. Dozens of them. Moleskin notebooks filled with a decade of my life. My first attempt at a macaron, a smudged, frustrated entry from 2012. The precise temperature chart I developed for tempering chocolate. Dated March 2014. A sketch of the 5-tiered wedding cake I designed, the one that got the Astor Patisserie its first write-up in a major bridal magazine. A write-up that quoted my mother as saying, "The design just came to me in a dream. I spent the entire night scanning. Page by page, I digitized everything." My grandmother's original journal, with her spidery, elegant script. My own journals, filled with my frantic scrawl, with sketches, with ingredient sourcing, with stains from vanilla and raspberry coulis. I meticulously documented the evolution of every single recipe they were selling. I found the original blog posts I had written years before the patisserie even existed. Posts where I'd shared the early versions of my family secrets. I dug through old emails, finding the ones where I'd sent Leo and my mother recipes with notes like, "Try this new version of the financier. I think the browned butter makes a huge difference." I created a folder on my desktop. I named it the Astor Patisserie Archive. I then created a subfolder. I named it Evidence. I felt a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a curator of the truth. I was building a case. Not a legal case. Not yet, anyway. But a case for my own sanity. A case that proved I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't ungrateful. I was the creator, and my work had been systematically stolen. As the sun came up, I made myself a pot of strong black coffee and sat at my computer. I bought a domain name. I chose a simple, elegant website template. I started writing. I didn't write with anger. I wrote with a quiet, resolute precision. I told the story of my grandmother, Clara. I wrote about her love for baking, about the magic she created in her small kitchen. And then, I wrote about how I tried to carry that magic forward. I uploaded the scanned pages of her journal, and next to them, the scanned pages of mine. I showed the evolution, the legacy, the real one. I didn't mention my mother or my brother by name. I didn't have to. I simply called the post The Secret Ingredient. When it was done, I saved it as a draft. I wasn't ready to publish it yet. This was my insurance policy. This was the key. They thought they had me in a cage, but they didn't realize I was the one who had built it, and I knew exactly how to take it apart. My grandmother Clara didn't just teach me how to bake. She taught me that a recipe is a story. This brioche, she'd tell me, her hands expertly kneading the dough. This was the first bread your grandfather and I shared. He bought it from a little bakery in Paris on our honeymoon. Every cake, every cookie had a history. It was a history of love, of scarcity, of celebration. When she died, that history felt like it was dying with her. I was 22, just starting my first job at the library archives, feeling adrift and terribly alone. Baking became my anchor. Recreating her recipes was like having a conversation with her. But I couldn't just copy them. I'm a researcher by nature. I had to understand the why. Why this much flour? Why this temperature? So I started experimenting, changing things, adding my own chapters to her stories. I replaced her vegetable shortening with French butter. I introduced cardamom and orange blossom water to her simple pound cake. It became my story too. A collaboration across time. The idea for the business wasn't even my mother's initially. Not really. It was mine, in a way. I had brought one of my new creations, a lavender honey chiffon cake, to a family dinner. Leo's then girlfriend, a sharp, ambitious girl named Maya, took one bite and her eyes widened. "Chloe, this is professional grade," she'd said. "You could sell this. Seriously." Leo had laughed. "Chloe? Nah, she's a bookworm." But my mother had looked at me, then at the cake, and I saw a little spark ignite in her eyes. 2 weeks later, she came to me with the farmer's market idea. Maya had tried to warn me. I remember her pulling me aside a few months into the venture. "Be careful, Chloe," she'd said quietly. "Your family sees a product. You see a passion. Make sure you get a contract. Put your name on it." I was young and naive. I thought she was being cynical. "They're my family," I'd replied, almost offended. Leo and Maya broke up about a year later. I heard she moved to Chicago to start her own marketing firm. I hadn't thought about her in years. The first real betrayal, the one that should have been a giant flashing red light, happened about a year in. A local food blogger wanted to feature us. It was our first piece of press. They wanted to interview the baker behind the magic. I was ecstatic. I bought a new dress. I spent days preparing my notes, my stories about Grandma. The night before the interview, my mother called me. "Darling, there's been a slight change of plans," she said. "The blogger thinks it would be a more compelling story if it focuses on me. You know, the mother rediscovering her family's roots. It's just better for the brand." I was devastated. "But I'm the baker, Mom. And you are doing a wonderful job," she cooed. "But this is about strategy. Your contribution is invaluable, but it's behind the scenes. That's your strength. Let Leo and me handle the public-facing stuff. We'll make sure you're taken care of. I promise." I believed her. I stayed home, and I read the article a week later. It was a glowing profile of Eleanor Astor, the brilliant self-taught baker who resurrected her mother's lost art. There was a photo of her holding my cake, smiling as if she'd just pulled it from the oven herself. That was the day I stopped being a partner and officially became their employee, whether I knew it or not. The poison had been administered. and I was too loyal to even acknowledge I was being poisoned. The week of the Food Network shoot was the culmination of it all. It started with the cookbook deal and ended with them standing in my mother's show kitchen, ready to perform their final act of appropriation on a national stage. After my quiet night of scanning and building my secret website, I went into a state of suspended animation. I went to my job at the library. I cataloged medieval manuscripts. I answered research questions. I functioned. But underneath, a revolution was brewing. They would call and text, all bubbling with excitement. "Chloe, the producer wants a list of our 5 most photogenic cakes. Send it over. Chloe, can you prep the dough for the brioche? We want to have a live baking demo." I would reply with short, non-committal answers. "We'll look into it." "Okay." I was a gray rock. I gave them nothing. They were so wrapped up in their own impending stardom, they didn't even notice my distance. The day before the shoot, Leo and my mother called me for a final prep meeting. I went to the flagship store. They sat me down in my mother's glass-walled office, overlooking the bakery floor. "Okay," Leo began, tapping a pen on a legal pad. "Here's the shot list. We open on Mom, telling the story about Grandma Clara in Paris. Then we cut to a montage of our beautiful pastries." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a script. A fucking script. It had lines for my mother. It had camera directions. And then I saw my name. Chloe, Eleanor's shy but supportive daughter, brings out the family recipe book. She smiles, watching her mother with pride. I stared at the words. Shy but supportive daughter. They had literally written me into their play as a stagehand. "I won't be doing that," I said, my voice flat. Leo looked up, annoyed. "What do you mean you won't be doing that? It's one line. You just walk in and hand her the book." "The book I wrote, you mean?" I asked. Eleanor jumped in, her voice taking on that wounded, manipulative tone. "Chloe, we have discussed this. This is a narrative. It is for the good of the family. Why are you being so difficult now? Of all times." Difficult. I finally looked up from the script, and I met her eyes. For the first time, I didn't see my mother. I saw a stranger, a con artist who had been playing the long game for a decade. Difficult is spending 40 hours developing a cake that you take credit for in a magazine. Difficult is getting calls at midnight to fix your production issues. Difficult is watching you lie over and over again and being told it's for my own good. You are not telling a narrative. You are telling a lie. And you're using my work and my grandmother's memory as your props. A stunned silence fell over the office. Leo recovered first. He threw his pen down. "Oh, here we go. After everything we've done for you. We pay your rent. We gave your little hobby a purpose. You'd be baking for no one if it weren't for us. You should be grateful. This is jealousy. Pure and simple. You can't stand that we made it a success." "You made it a success?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You are marketers. You are salespeople. But you are not bakers. You are not creators. You are thieves. You have stolen my work, my stories, and you are about to stand on national television and commit fraud." Eleanor stood up, her face pale with fury. "You are an ungrateful child. After all the sacrifices I have made, how dare you speak to me that way? How dare you?" I shot back, my voice finally breaking free. "How dare you use her memory for your own vanity? Grandma Clara would be ashamed of you. Deeply, profoundly ashamed. I picked up the script and ripped it in half. Find another prop for your show, I said. I'm done. I walked out, leaving them in the ruins of their own lies. The morning of the shoot, I woke up to a barrage of texts. First, from Leo. Get over here now, you are not doing this. Then from my mother. Chloe Ann asked her, you will answer this phone. You are embarrassing this family. Then from my father, the silent enabler, the man who had watched this happen for 10 years and never said a word. Sweetheart, please, just come and talk to your mother. Don't burn this bridge. Burn this bridge? I thought. You guys burned it down and sold the ashes for a profit. I ignored them all. I made coffee. I sat at my computer. And with a steady hand, I opened the draft of my blog post. I read it over one last time. It was quiet. It was respectful. And it was devastatingly true. I attached a link to a public Google Drive folder containing the high-resolution scans of every journal page, every email, every piece of evidence I had collected. And then I hit publish. I shared the link on my personal, long-neglected social media pages. I didn't add any angry commentary. I just wrote, a recipe is a story. It's important to get the story right. This is mine. At the Astor Patisserie Legacy. Then I turned my phone off. I knew the local food community was small and tightly knit. The bloggers, the chefs, the critics, they all talked. I was counting on it. I spent the rest of the morning in a strange state of calm. I cleaned my apartment. I organized my bookshelves. I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't realized was missing. It was the feeling of a massive weight being lifted from my soul. Around noon, I turned my phone back on. It was a war zone. Hundreds of notifications. Dozens of missed calls from my family. But there were other messages, too. Messages from old friends. Messages from strangers. And a direct message on Instagram from a name I hadn't seen in years. Maya, Leo's ex-girlfriend. Her message was simple. I just read your post. It's about damn time. Call me. I have some things you might want to see. The fallout was faster and more furious than I could have ever imagined. The blog post spread like wildfire through the city's online food scene. Local food bloggers who had written glowing reviews of my mother's genius began posting updates, linking to my site. The comment section of the Astor Patisserie's Instagram page became a dumpster fire of questions and accusations. Is it true you stole the recipes? Why isn't Chloe Astor credited as the founder? Someone found the Food Network producer's social media handle and started tagging him, asking if he was aware he was filming a segment based on a lie. By mid-afternoon, the production van was spotted packing up and leaving my mother's house. The national TV segment was dead. I sat on my floor, phone in hand, and called Maya. Her voice was exactly as I remembered it. Sharp, no nonsense, and utterly clear. Chloe, I am so damn proud of you, she said without any preamble. I've been watching this happen for years and biting my tongue, but it wasn't my place. Now it is. She told me she had kept records. Back when she was dating Leo and helping them with their initial business plan, she had insisted on documentation. She had emails from Leo, from the very beginning, where he explicitly laid out the strategy. Position Mom as the creator. Chloe is the back-end talent. Cleaner brand story. She had early financial statements that showed 0 salary or equity allocated to me, just a line item for rent assistance. He called it the Chloe Fund, Maya said, her voice dripping with disdain. Like you were their personal charity case, not the foundation of their entire company. He's an idiot, Chloe, but he's a documented idiot. I'm sending you everything. An hour later, a zip file landed in my inbox. It was an arsenal. My family's reaction was predictable. First came the rage from Leo, a string of texts that escalated from furious to pathetic. You've ruined us. Are you happy now? You've destroyed your own family over a fucking cake recipe. Then came the guilt from my mother. A long, tearful voicemail. I don't understand how you could be so cruel, Chloe. Everything we did for you, to give your talent a platform. You've twisted it into something ugly and hateful. Your grandmother would be heartbroken. The manipulation was so transparent now, it was almost laughable. Finally, a text from my dad. Your mother is beside herself. You need to take that website down and apologize. They still didn't get it. They thought this was a tantrum. They thought if they applied enough pressure, I would fold, just like I always had. But this wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration of independence. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I uploaded Maya's documents to my Google Drive into a new subfolder titled Corroborating Evidence. Then, I wrote a second blog post. It was shorter. Thank you to everyone who has read my story. For those with further questions about the business practices of the Astor Patisserie, I offer these for your consideration. And I linked to Maya's files. That was the kill shot. The narrative was no longer, he said, she said. It was now, she said. And she has receipts. The lesson in all of this, the one that hit me with the force of a physical blow, was that my family's love had always been conditional. It was contingent on my silence, on my compliance, on my willingness to be small so they could be big. I had spent a decade shrinking myself, convincing myself that their success was my success, that being the secret ingredient was a noble supportive role. But a secret ingredient is still just an ingredient. It gets consumed, used up, and forgotten. It's not the dish itself. I realized that my need for their approval was a kind of addiction. I kept going back for another hit of their praise, no matter how small, no matter how laced with poison. I was so terrified of being abandoned by them that I allowed them to abandon me in 1,000 other ways, every single day, walking away, publishing my story. It wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of survival. It was me, the archivist, finally deciding to preserve the most important record of all, my own truth. The legacy my grandmother left me wasn't a set of instructions for making cake. It was a lesson in pouring your love and your story into what you create. For 10 years, I had poured my love and my story into a business that erased me from the narrative. The real betrayal wasn't the theft of my recipes. It was the theft of my voice. They took my story and told it in their own words, and I finally understood that you cannot let someone else be the author of your life. You have to pick up the pen and write it yourself, even if your hands are shaking. The peace I felt after hitting publish, was unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't the giddy peace of victory. It was the quiet, profound peace of authenticity. For the first time, the person I was on the inside matched the story the world could see on the outside. And that, I learned, is the only legacy worth protecting. The days following my digital declaration of truth were a blur of digital noise and profound real-world silence. My family cut me off completely. No more calls, no more texts. It was as if I had ceased to exist. In a way, I had. The version of me they relied on, the quiet, compliant, endlessly giving Chloe, was gone. The silence was unnerving at first, a void where the constant pressure and expectation used to be. But then it began to feel like clean open air, a space to breathe. The local press had a field day. The story was too juicy to ignore. Bakery empire crumbles amidst family fraud scandal. The secret ingredient, how one woman's stolen recipes built a lie. The Astor Patisserie locations temporarily closed, citing family matters. Their social media went dark. Then the legal letters started. A cease and desist from a lawyer my family had hired, demanding I take down the website for defamation and slander. I forwarded it to Maya, who connected me with a pro bono intellectual property lawyer she knew in Chicago. His name was Ben. He was calm, methodical, and after reviewing my archive, he told me something that made my blood run cold with validation. Chloe, they don't have a case. You do. Based on these records, you have a strong claim for copyright infringement, misappropriation of trade secrets, and potentially even fraud. The question is, what do you want to do? What did I want? I didn't want their money. I didn't want to destroy them. I just wanted my story back. For now, I told him, I just want them to leave me alone. Ben drafted a response to their lawyer that was a masterclass in polite, legal annihilation, pointing out their client's potential criminal liability and suggesting they cease all contact immediately. We never heard from them again. With the noise finally silenced, my life began to change in small, wonderful ways. I started baking again, but only for myself. I rediscovered the joy of it, the simple, meditative pleasure of working with my hands without a deadline or a critic looming over my shoulder. I started taking my old blog seriously, posting new recipes that were mine and mine alone, along with the stories that went with them. My readership grew exponentially. People weren't just coming for the cakes. They were coming for the story of authenticity, of reclaiming one's voice. One day, I got an email from a senior editor at a major publishing house in New York, the very same one that had offered my family the cookbook deal. "Dear Miss Astor," it began, "I was the editor who met with your family. I've been following your blog. Your voice is incredible, and your grandmother's story is deeply moving. I know this is a difficult time, but I have to ask, have you ever considered writing your own cookbook? The real one." We took the meeting via video call. I was so nervous my hands were shaking. But this time, it was different. I wasn't a ghostwriter. I was the author. I told them my vision. A book that was half memoir, half recipe collection. A tribute to my grandmother, and a story about finding my own voice. They offered me a deal on the spot. A deal with my name, and only my name, on the cover. A few weeks later, my father showed up at my apartment. It was the first time I'd seen any of them in person. He looked older, tired. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. He didn't try to get in. He just stood on the doorstep. "Your mother, she's not doing well, Chloe," he said, his voice thick. "The business is gone. We had to dissolve it." "Leo, he moved out of state. He blames me. He blames your mother. He blames you." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Can't you just find it in your heart to forgive? We're still your family." And I looked at my father, the man whose silence had been a weapon, whose passivity had enabled a decade of abuse. "I forgive you for being weak," I said, my voice steady. "But I can't forgive you for choosing their lies over my truth. Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let you back into my life. Some doors have to stay closed." I gently shut the door, and for the first time, I didn't feel a shred of guilt. I just felt peace. The story wasn't over, but that chapter was, and the next one was all mine to write.